Hi, and welcome to Mark's Motivational Podcast on this Sunday evening. Tonight, I'm delighted to be joined by another guest, Carol Van Den Hende. It's a really good website. You can check her out. It's really good, and she's a publisher of a great book. So I'm really looking forward to talking to Carol tonight. So thanks a million for joining me tonight, Carol, on the podcast.
Oh, it's great to be with you. It's late by you, so thanks for making time.
Oh no, that's great. No, that's great. Yeah, no, thanks very much. And so how, like, probably starting off at the beginning. What's the name of your book that you've published?
Yeah, so Mark, I'm so thrilled to share with your listeners tonight that I'm here to talk about Goodbye Orchid. It's
Okay,
actually award-winning Goodbye Orchid, and
brilliant.
it's been a thrill to be on this journey of both writing it and then taking it to publication, because
Yeah,
I truly believe the work can do good in the world and
yeah.
motivates me absolutely both to write it and to have Goodbye Orchid published.
How long ago did you write it, Carol?
You know what? When we talk about the journey of Goodbye Orchid, we have to go back 7 years. And in
Okay.
fact, I started writing it really as a place of solace for myself. I turned to writing as a place of, kind of pouring my heart out onto the page.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I was quite inspired by seeing stories of combat wounded veterans in the news. And that's really where the spark of the idea for Goodbye Orchid came from. And then in those 7 years, really, I'd say it was a good solid year of writing, a good solid year of editing. And then from that point, it was really finding the right publisher. And then this last year has been all about commercialization,
Yeah.
bringing Goodbye Orchid out and finding readers who are really resonating with the story.
Mm. Yeah, I'm delighted that's gone doing so well for you. That's brilliant, Carol. Like, so that's so well done with that. And so like, where can people buy it? Is available on Amazon?
Absolutely. So Goodbye Orchid is available on Amazon, on book, actually it's escaping me. Bookshop is a place to buy it through
Okay,
independent booksellers.
very good.
It's available pretty much anywhere you shop for books online.
Mm-hmm.
It's available as a paperback, as a hardcover.
Mm.
The ebook is actually, the publisher is putting the ebook on sale this coming weekend for Galentine's or Valentine's Day,
Yeah.
February 13th is
Mm-hmm.
the key date to look for Goodbye Orchid for less than $1 on Amazon as the ebook. So it's quite a bargain next weekend. So people definitely should look for that then. Um, and it's also available on Audible as an audiobook, which was another great experience. So this is my
Mm.
first published novel, and the audiobook version of Goodbye Orchid is my first experience narrating as well, which I completely enjoyed. Also, and I learned so much, and I have incredible respect for people who narrate audiobooks.
Mm. Yeah, I'd say it's a very tough enough process to do that. Is it, like, for an audiobook? Is it, Carol? I'd say it's challenging enough to get used to doing that. I'd say, is it?
It's true, and I took it quite seriously because I wanted to be able to do justice to the work. And what
Mm.
I learned is, just the incredible craft that audiobook narrators put into their work, the amount that they need to think about just the characterization of the different people in the book. The way that you breathe makes a difference. There are
Mm.
breathing exercises and vocal exercises you can do to warm up before actually recording. And then there's all the technical aspects as well, but for sure, the performance aspects, I think, is what had me so incredibly, filled with respect for people who narrate audiobooks. It's a lot of work, but it's also incredibly joyous.
Mm.
It made me very close to the material. It gave me a chance to relive the entire story,
Brilliant.
and I absolutely loved that experience of producing the audiobook.
That sounds brilliant. That sounds really, really good, Carol. Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us tonight. So could you maybe talk a little bit about the book? This, like, maybe just give us a little taster, so to speak, for people who are listening. Thanks, Carol.
Yeah, let me tell you about Goodbye Orchid, in which right in chapter one, you will meet Phoenix, Walker, and Orchid Page, the main characters. And what you'll find when you meet them is that Phoenix Walker has spent his entire life striving for perfection.
Okay.
And that perfectionism may actually trip him up in the course of the story, as if you read Goodbye Orchid, you'll find out. He's had a very successful life, success in school and in work, and he's actually at the precipice of falling in love with half Asian Orchid Page. And when we meet them in chapter one, Orchid has been striving herself. She's had a much harder upbringing. She's had, loss of her parents early in life. She's really a self-made person. And so she's been striving for this opportunity to go on an international business assignment. And so when we meet them at the airport, Phoenix is actually about to say goodbye to Orchid, thinking that she's leaving for 6 weeks on this business trip
Mm.
and that she'll be back. In fact, the first line of the book is Phoenix never believed today was goodbye, because he thinks it's only temporary and they're going to come back together, and that their relationship is deepening into something much more than the professional relationship that it started out being.
Mm.
But what happens is that a traumatic accident befalls Phoenix while Orchid is away. And so while she's away, she doesn't know what's happened. And when he wakes in the hospital and finds that he's been forever changed by the accident, he's longing for Orchid and thinking about her. But he also knows that because she had lost her parents early, that she had witnessed trauma as a child, that she's quite sensitive to images of trauma. And
Mm.
therefore, in order to protect her and to love her, he asks himself the hardest question he's ever faced in his life, which is whether to love her, he needs to leave her. And that's the central tension of the story. Some reviewers call it a modern day affair to remember. Readers
Okay.
tell me to bring tissues when reading,
Mm.
both heartwarming and heart-wrenching Goodbye Orchid.
Mm.
And people are really touched by the story. And the reason I say it's inspired by combat wounded veterans, even though the characters aren't military characters themselves, is because there are, when you think about the men and women who go to war for us, who, are our soldiers and who protect us, they train at the height of their game, when they serve. And then when they're injured, they fall so far. And
Mm.
honestly, what I was inspired by when I started writing Goodbye Orchid was the strength and resilience combat wounded veterans demonstrate to get back to good. And it's that same journey that Phoenix takes when he falls from being so successful to having suffered these really traumatic injuries, and then finding his way back and finding that no matter what, he is whole. That journey, the journey of that he goes through of anger and denial and bargaining and ultimately acceptance, is one that mirrors that journey of combat wounded veterans. And I've been incredibly heartened by the feedback that I've gotten from combat wounded veterans who have read and loved Goodbye Orchid.
Well, that's brilliant. Like to actually for them to get to like it so much, that must be a brilliant thing to do, because you've got inspiration from them. So that sounds really good. And I absolutely love your background there, Carol. Like with your book, that's really really good. Like that looks really well. That's very good.
Yeah. For those who
How
can't,
how did you do
yeah,
that? A matter of interest. Sorry, how did you?
yeah.
That's really really good.
It's a great question. I mean, so there's a story behind the design of the book
Yeah,
cover for Goodbye Orchid. And for those who
yeah.
are listening and aren't able to see, you're welcome to go on my website and you'll see
Mm,
it on carolvandenhende.com. And what you'll
mm,
see is the cover of Goodbye Orchid features not just regular orchids, but they're actually shattered. These are shattered orchids. And those shattered orchids are meant to represent the emotional and cover. It has this feeling of dynamism. And because that image of shattered orchids is so central to the theme of the story, we actually put it into the pages of the book too. So if you had a physical copy of Goodbye Orchid, what you would find is the bottom right corner of every page has a little image of orchids. And when you flip through the pages, the orchids will appear to shatter until you
wow.
get to the darkest point of the story. And then they'll come back together until you get to the emotionally satisfying ending. There's actually a little video of this on my YouTube channel. So feel free to Google Carol Van Den Hende on YouTube, and you'll see there's a short little clip where you can see how the orchids shatter even on the interior of the book.
That sounds brilliant. That sounds really, really good. Like that's so clever. Like I can actually see the picture there. I can get exactly what you're saying. That's amazing. Well done. That's really, really good. Because what I'll be doing as well is I'll probably post this on YouTube and Facebook for people to see as well. So as well as hearing the experience, they'll be able to see it as well. So once you're happy enough with that,
Wonderful. Yeah, that's
yeah.
great. And the designers had so much fun with this. They even animated the cover.
Wow.
So there are GIFs where you can see the shattering of the orchids on the cover as a GIF.
That's brilliant. Yeah, really good. So Carol, like, what motivated you to start writing this book? Was it something that, like, I know you kind of answered that in a little bit of a way, like, but was there one particular thing that got you motivated to start, Carol?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'll answer in two ways. One is I'll say that I've always loved first reading and then writing, even as a kid,
Yeah.
as a child, as a teenager, as an adult, maybe a little less so once I started getting busy with work and life
Mm,
and probably wasn't writing as much as I was when I was younger. But
mm,
I've always loved the written word. I've loved literature and I've loved reading and writing. What sparked this particular story, what sparked me to write Goodbye Orchid, was a period of difficulty in our own personal lives. And
mm,
so I've spent a career where I've worked in digital technologies and marketing and now strategy for a major food company, Mars Incorporated. And one of my assignments was I was in China with Mars for 2 years. So my
mm,
husband, my twins, and I had all moved to Beijing.
mm,
During that time, while we had really an incredible experience, we also had some difficulties. One of our twins was not settling well into
mm.
China. And so
Okay.
we actually decided to come back to the US after just the 2 year assignment and not extend the assignment. And it
Mm,
was during that period of, really upheaval in our lives, moving from a different country back home, back to the US, having one of my boys, they were quite little, they were 9 years old at that time, not
mm,
really doing well and having a lot of difficulty in school. And so it was honestly just a period of um, immense, emotional upheaval in our
yeah.
lives. And at that time, writing, journaling had always been a part of my practice anyway, just for
Mm,
myself. But it seemed to me this world of fiction in which you could craft, whatever you wanted and build whatever characters you wanted. They could go anywhere and anything could happen,
mm,
became a place of really great kind of imagination and a place of, beauty and escape and intrigue. And I loved going to that place. And it just gave me solace, as I had mentioned earlier.
mm,
And I think also at the same time, what was happening in my career was I was moving from being a marketer, where I was responsible for everything from advertising and promotions and packaging and design and lots of creativity in my job itself. I was moving into being a strategist or an insights professional. And
mm,
although I love that work, it doesn't have the straight, creativity that being a marketer had. And so I
yeah.
think also at that time, I was looking for an outlet or a source for my creativity to flow into.
Mm.
And so writing became that place for me.
Oh, that's a great story, yeah, because I understand what you're saying, like with all the turmoil having to move back. Like, did you start the story when you were living in China or when you came back to the States, Carol?
Yeah, it was after I'd come back. And it was funny because I had always had in my mind that I would write at some point in my life. I always thought, it'd be the type of thing I'd do when I had more time or when I retired or
Mm,
and something about, I don't know, being in that moment of turmoil, just it struck me that there's really no reason to wait
mm,
for anything that's meaningful in our lives.
yeah.
There really is no reason to not just start
Mm,
today, right now.
yeah.
And that's what I did.
Mm.
And then it formed into this beautiful story.
Yeah, no, well done, because you're absolutely right. Like, because people kind of put things off till tomorrow. I'll do this when next year when things are less busy. I'll do this when I retire. I'll do But well done. Just you have to kind of just put yourself there and just start. Like, don't you, like, because there'll never be a right time for anything. So well done for starting. And thanks very much for giving that insight. That's amazing. And so did you have a kind of a structure you used when you were writing, Carol? Was there kind of a structure you used for writing this story?
So this being my first novel, I would say I was much more pantsing it than
Mm,
plotting it.
okay.
And so I had a sense, I got to know my characters by writing. I wrote a
Mm,
lot of backstory that did not end up in the finished product itself. I, did a lot of character studies and really delved into what would their mindset be, what would their motivation be, what would the conflicts be, how would they deal with those conflicts. And so um, it was really experiencing it in order to craft it. I think that now that I've had that experience, I have a bit more appreciation for having enough structure so that I know what the certainly the overarching arc of the story and the main points of the story. So now that I'm working on the next book, I have much more of a sense of that than the first one, in which it was much more of a pantsed exploration.
Yeah,
You're a
that's
writer
great.
as well, right, Mark?
Yeah, I am. I've published my first book there just about a month ago. Well, it got the paperback there back in January, so it's great to have a physical book there with your name, and it's like great, like But I self-published it through Amazon, which is a really good way for first-time writers to actually do that. Like anybody who's listening, I can't recommend that enough, because it's very straightforward. Like they pretty much do everything for you, like but like. Was that kind of tough for you when you were trying to find a publisher? Was that like an obstacle at the time for you, Carol?
Yeah, so I went through two phases in terms of finding the publisher. So first, I signed with an agent from a
Mm.
writers conference, which
Yeah.
was a great experience. I pitched them through an experience called Pitch Slam, where you get 90 seconds to share your concept, and you get 90 seconds of feedback, and you decide in that moment whether to consider a relationship or not. And so I found my agent through Pitch Slam, and so the first phase was we went to the big five publishers that are based in New York. We didn't find the right home there. And I think now that I look back, we were pitching the story as a romance. And although it does have a love story at the center, it doesn't actually fit the criteria specifically of romance genre. And so now the publisher I have, it's really classified as contemporary fiction or mainstream fiction with romantic elements. And so that's a much more appropriate designation. And now that we've understood what the nature of it is, we've been able to find a publisher that really suits it well. And I think what I love about working with Kohler Books, and when I signed the contract with them, the founder of Kohler Books, John Kohler, said to me, "This book is going to do good in the world and it will change lives." And when he said that, I just knew that he understood the messages on the pages of the book, that he believed in the mission, and that made me feel really great about being with him as a publisher.
Yeah. So there's big celebrations back then.
Yeah, there have been multiple celebrations, as you must know too. I can't believe you're only a month
Yeah. Well, I see it's kind of different.
publication journey.
Well, I say it's different because we're in lockdown now, so I can't really. I'm really happy about it, but like I'm gonna wait till things improve where I can launch the book properly then, But no, it's great to have your friends giving you feedback saying, "Oh, that's really good," because it's a kid's story. It's kind of a collection of stories made for the children growing up through the year, or bedtime stories, for getting to bed. So I kind of decided to put them all into a storybook. So I'm happy it's there. But thanks, Carl. Yeah, but getting back to yourself, like that's great the way it's funny the way when you're writing a book, the characters are kind of live with you, don't they? They're kind of there all the time with you. But isn't it fascinating the way as well that the way when at the end of writing that book and publishing that book, where you found what niche it's in, what kind of gender. I think when you were talking about that time, that's what came to mind. It's would you agree with that?
It's true. Actually, I think a number of authors grapple with what genre are they actually writing in, because there can be elements of different things,
Mm,
and it's hard to put creativity in a really specific bucket at times.
mm,
And so I think there are works that certainly can cross genres a bit. And it's both a wondrous thing, but it also can be a bit of a challenge.
mhm,
Therefore, finding the right place to put it, and therefore, how do you find the readers that are going to enjoy the work? But it's a
mm.
wonderful thing once you do find the right genre and the right home.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's great. Like, well done, that's brilliant. But what I'd like you to do as well, Carol, you can send me on. I have the link to your website, which looks really good. Like I said earlier on, it looks really professional. Well done on that. But if you can send me on the name of your book, and obviously when you publish a new book, I can add it onto the podcast as well for you.
That's wonderful. I'm working on the next book, so I would love to be able to share when book two is ready.
Yeah.
It will be in 2021. I'm really looking
Mm,
forward to that. I've been into a lot of book clubs lately, and
mm,
readers are loving Goodbye Orchid and want to hear more about what happens to the characters afterwards,
yeah.
and maybe
Yeah.
even what happens to the characters before. So that gives me a lot of heart to write about Phoenix and
Yeah.
Orchid, and also Phoenix's twin brother Caleb, and all of the other characters, their mother Veronica. um, in subsequent books, and then continue to actually do good with the book, because a portion of profits from Goodbye Orchid is going to charity.
Oh,
And
brilliant.
so I continue, and I look forward to continuing to be able to donate to places like Heather Abbott Foundation and USA Cares to help military veterans and their families through the work. So yeah, that's really exciting.
Well, that's very
And
kind of you. That's really kind. Like, yeah, it is nice to give something back when, like, when you're like, thankfully the book is doing well. I'm so happy for you that, and to be able to do that is amazing as well. It sounds like, you know, by the look in your face, is like, it's that really satisfies you, like, and makes you feel good about
yeah, it feels great. And as you'd said before, there are multiple, there are times to celebrate the book. And I think there have been multiple points for that in Goodbye Orchid, as I think you'll find with your book too, and especially when we get out of lockdown and you can celebrate in person.
properly. Yeah,
For
yeah,
me, it was not just, for signing the contract and also publishing, but also when Goodbye Orchid has been awarded. That's been incredibly also very satisfying. And
hmm,
so the American Fiction Award, the Pinnacle Award, the Best Book Award, the Royal Dragonfly, the I'm forgetting a bunch right now, Audiobook Reviewer, New Author of the Year. Um, been 9 awards actually in total,
wow.
and that has been an incredible experience as well.
That is brilliant. Well done. You must be. That's really, really good. Yeah, I feel privileged to have you on the podcast. Thanks very much for
Oh,
coming on, Carol.
yeah, thanks. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I wish you
Yeah,
so much luck
yeah.
with your book as well.
Thank you. And you've been in the Inkies, you know, the Dublin Writers Group. How do you find that? It's really, really good, isn't it?
Oh my goodness, it's such a lovely group of
Yeah,
writers. I
yeah.
absolutely adore it. So it's
Mm,
been a number of years since I was in Dublin for work. Actually, Mars has a program where they send associates to work with nonprofits. It's called
right.
the Mars Ambassador Program, and I was
Okay.
the Mars Ambassador for Antashka. So I worked with
Right.
their environmental education unit in Dublin to
Mhm,
help them really craft a marketing and kind of brand strategy to be able
mm,
to get the word out about sustainability and environmental education in a broader way. I
mm.
absolutely loved that experience. And while I was in Dublin working with Antashka during the day, on the weekends and at night, I had free time to explore Dublin, and I was coming to Inkies on the weekends
Oh,
and
brilliant.
loving it so much. I kept in touch, through the email list over
Hmm.
time. But then once lockdown happened, now the events are virtual. And so
Mm.
it's really incredible. I know that there are people on Inkies there from Boston, from the US.
Yeah,
I had recommended the group to Greg Fields, and now
yeah.
he's
He's really good.
joined and he's really loving it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's, yeah, such a great group.
Yeah, Greg Fields. I had him on the podcast recently. He's a great writer. Like, he really is. Like, because the prompts are amazing that Harry gives every week. You know, I never did that, dealt in that, experienced that stuff before. But it's great the way you can kind of just looking at a little picture and a little piece of writing underneath it, like the stuff that comes into your head. Like, it's really, really good, isn't it?
Yeah, it really hones
Yeah,
your writing too, to have to
yeah,
write on the spot like that.
yeah. It does. Yeah.
It's pretty incredible, some of the pieces that people put together in that
Mm,
short period of time
yeah,
are
yeah.
really polished.
Yeah, really good, because Greg, he actually done a really good one at Christmas time, because we all did a Christmas story. Like, his was, wow, like, really, really good, you know. And I actually got him to kind of give a rendition on the podcast, and it went down really well, like, you know. Yeah, yeah. So it was really good. And
That's great.
how's everything with COVID with your family? I hope all's okay.
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. We are fine. We're really fortunate that I can, work remotely, that
Mm,
our kids go to school, sometimes physical, and then sometimes it's virtual schooling. And we're just very lucky that no one's gotten sick, that we're
yeah,
doing just fine. But of course, we hope everybody's
yeah,
good out there. How about you
yeah.
and your family?
Yeah, we're all good. Thank you. Yeah, we're all good. Like, you know, like, I share that as well, Carol. Like, you know, my heart goes to anybody that's suffering this time, be it sickness, or it could be the other side of the coin, like with financially as well. So hopefully things are looking a bit more brighter now in the next couple of months with the vaccine. So
Yeah.
fingers crossed, everything will get bit back to normal, you know. And
Yeah.
how you finding remote working yourself, Carol? Is
It's surprisingly better than I expected it to
yeah,
be. When we
yeah,
first started last March, I thought it was, of course, going to be shorter term than it has been.
mm,
And I thought I miss seeing my coworkers in person.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I feel like the screen, like I feel like I'm with you, it
Mm.
doesn't feel like even though we're in separate countries, we're in different time zones.
Yeah.
So I've gotten so used to working in this way
Mm.
that I think we've found new ways to be productive. And I think the future of work will never go back to
No.
exactly what we had before.
Yeah, no, I agree with you because I'm the same. I work remotely as well in my job. A lot of us do, so I'm the same. Yeah, exactly. But just getting back to your book, Carol, for a moment. When you were writing it, did you have any strategy? If sometimes everybody kind of gets kind of hits a wall, so to speak. Like I don't know what you call it, but was there a way that you kind of motivated yourself to keep going if you had that? Like did you have kind of some kind of strategy? Some people use um like how could I say, like like a little gift to themselves or treat themselves to something to finish in a chapter. How did you cope with that, if you Carol? Sorry,
That's
it's a bit of a
interesting.
it's a long-winded question,
Yeah, no, it's
but
a good
sorry.
question about the
Yeah,
motivation.
yeah.
And I think you're right. One strategy you were just talking about is interim goals, to
Mm,
have milestones beyond just the entire book. And I think that's smart. I initially thought you were a bit about writer's block, what we might call writer's block, when you kind of get stuck and you feel like, well, what
mm,
happens? And maybe I could just give up. There's really no
yeah.
one waiting for this. So why do I keep going? And there I did learn a lot of strategies from one of the editors I worked with. She had me really work on different ways to see the same material with fresh eyes. And so the different ways she had me do this, if I was stuck on a particular portion or didn't know how to move forward, she would have me simply, for instance, I could take one scene that I'd written in Phoenix's point of view, and she'd say, turn it around, now write it in Orchid's point of view, and what fresh perspective might you get from writing from a different point of view? So that
Mm,
helped. So there's also kind of very tactical things, which is you can take your entire document and change what font it's in. And when you see it in a different font, it actually gives you a different feeling.
wow.
Or she would have me, I might be, especially in the muddy, what we call the muddy middle, when you get towards the
Mm,
middle of the novel and you're not sure, you've created all these obstacles and conflicts, and how do you untangle it in order to get to the emotionally satisfying ending? So she would have me brainstorm, and she would say, don't just give me the first idea for what could solve that, and not even the second, and not even the third. Give me 10. I want 10 different possible avenues that this scene could go in to come to resolution. And that you'll actually find, as you dig deeper and deeper, you will find places that you hadn't imagined before.
Yeah, that's a great strategy. That's really, really good, Carol. That sounds brilliant. I must use that myself. I'm writing my next book. Thank you.
You're
but
welcome.
But yeah, because God, I was going to say something. Yeah, that's really good because like do you find as well when you're writing that book, if just say for instance, I was talking to another writer there recently who published 2 novels, and she was saying that like when she was writing, let's say about a character, and like she was doing something that didn't feel right about that character, that's when she could run into problems. Like it's like the character's guiding you in the book. Does that sound? I just found that fascinating. Like I just thought I'd ask you that, Carol, because I was like, wow, yeah. Because I had all
Absolutely.
my I had all my characters made up. When I was reading the stories to the kids at night. So it was just a matter of getting it all on paper. But like even though like I did have a few kind of say, will I put that there or will I not? Like it's funny, isn't it? Did you find that?
It's true. Sometimes characters go off and they do things that are out of character, and then
Mm,
you have to rein them back
yeah.
and actually always try to build in more intrigue. They say that what keeps a reader reading is that um, at the end of each chapter, there's something so enticing that you have to find out what happens in the next chapter, and
Mm,
that you have to do that even within the scenes of a chapter, and even sentence to sentence. Each sentence has to be interesting enough to lead to the next sentence.
yeah.
And so it's always in that way, how do you shine and refine and improve the tension and the conflict and the intrigue and the insight? Ultimately, I think that's what a lot of writers do, is we're bringing insight into the human condition.
Mm,
And so how do we weave more and more of that into the characterization, into the dialogue, and into each sentence of the prose?
That's great. Yeah, yeah, because that makes so much sense. Yeah, because from writing that book, I was exactly the same as you. Yeah, that's really good, Carol. Thank you. And maybe, yeah, listen, I really want to say thanks a million for coming on tonight to the podcast, Carol. I've really enjoyed this chat. But I might just ask you a couple of questions, if that's okay. That I ask most of the guests that come on. Just a few of your favorites, if you don't mind. Me asking you that. So your favorite, do you have a favorite writer or a favorite author of a book yourself?
So, I mean, I love a lot of authors, and
Yeah.
they're the ones that I loved as a kid and, as an adult, and ones I've read recently.
Mm.
I'd say some that come to mind, Jojo Moyes' work really inspires me, and I liken it a bit to um, Goodbye Orchid. Sometimes people see some similarities between Me Before You and Goodbye Orchid, and so I think she's a great author to look at. Um, Reading a lot of great works. I just finished Less. I know I'm 3 years behind that came out in
Mm.
2017, but I just finished that by Andrew Sean Greer. Amazing piece of work.
Mm.
Um, and also, I have a special place in my heart for John Irving because my husband and I met on a train because
Okay.
he was carrying a John Irving book that I wanted
Mm.
to read. And that's why we started talking to each other, is
Wow.
because I wanted to see what he thought about the book. And he said that before he got off his next station, he said, well, if you give me your address, I'll send you a copy of the book. And that's how we started writing letters to each other, is because of John Irving. So he
Yeah,
always has a special place in my heart.
that was a very smooth move.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. That's a great story. And and would you like any non-fiction books? Have you read any non-fiction books yourself, Carl?
Yeah. So for work, I certainly do. And last year, I really enjoyed reading Range because
Mm.
that's about the idea that although sometimes in society we celebrate those who have incredible depth of expertise in one thing, like an example would be Tiger Woods, having played
Mm.
golf since he was, I don't even know the age, 3, 7,
Three or
really
three,
young.
three or something. Yeah, yeah.
And so, what we don't sometimes celebrate, but is actually really quite impactful in life, is the people who have depth ideas. And I especially like that because I've had careers. I've studied engineering. I've had a career as a digital technologist. I've had a career as a marketer, and now I'm a strategist or insights professional. And so those things can seem so disparate, but actually the ability to see the connection points between those things is where
Mm.
I can add a very unique value. And so range gives credence to that
Mm.
idea. So of course I'm going to love that. And
Yeah.
then there are some really great memoirs. I'm about halfway through the one by the founder of Nike. So that
Okay.
one's been really interesting. And then there was one by the CEO who helped navigate Ford Motors through the
Yeah.
2008 crisis. And it's called An American Icon, I believe. Um,
Okay.
and the one by the Nike founder is Phil Knight. Shoe Dog is the name of the book.
Mm.
Those are all really great.
Some
Yeah.
great recommends there. Thank you. Because there's a really good one. I don't know if you checked it out before. It's a writer called Carol Dweck.
Growth
Mindset.
mindset. Hmm.
Mindset. Oh my God, it's a
Yeah.
brilliant book,
Well,
isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a
And I
really.
think, yeah, her insight is so true that
Mm.
it doesn't have to be within a fixed pie. That
No.
there is, the growth mindset helps all of us, so we don't
Yeah.
have to feel competitive with each other.
Mm.
And there's more than enough to go around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's so much great stories in that book. Like I'd recommend to anybody to get it. Like it's one of my favorite I've read there over the last while. It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many good books out there.
Mm.
Actually, now that
Yeah.
you're getting me thinking too, I just finished. Have you read either Una Out of Order, which I absolutely loved, really clever about time. Normally I wouldn't read a time travel book, but this is so much more than that. It's actually
Mm.
um, a woman who lives her life at different points, so it's not in chronological order, and it's really inventive and beautifully put together. And then I also just finished The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab.
Mm.
That is incredible, beautifully written, um, and I don't want to give away too many spoilers if you haven't read it, but the premise is just so imaginative and amazing. So those
Yeah.
three are the last books I read: Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, Una Out of Order, and Less.
Yeah, they sound brilliant. They sound really, really good. Thanks for all the recommends there. That's great. A lot of people with their pen and paper writing all these stuff down. But no, science fiction is really, really good. I just, for the life of me, I'm reading a really good book there at the moment. It's, if you have a chance to check it out, Carol. He was on the podcast recently. His name is Will Disdale, and it's an absolute brilliant book. Sorry, I'm going to get the name of it now. Sorry about this now. So it's on the tip of my tongue. I just can't think about it. If you Google Will Disdale, his book it's science fiction, but it's all about time travel. When you mentioned time travel, it's so clever. Like it's really, really good. I'd recommend check it out.
Yeah, I definitely will. I know there's so many good authors.
This Souled World, it's called. Sorry, This Souled World, but it's SULD, not
Okay.
SU. Yeah, SULD. This Souled World. You won't. I'm halfway through it, and it's really, really good. I
I'll
don't
definitely
recommend
check
that.
out This Souled World by Will
Yeah.
Disdale. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
I
really
mean,
good.
you're right. There's so many authors. Now that we're talking, I'm thinking there's a book I'm really looking forward to. Karen Tanabe is an incredible author. She writes historical fiction. The last one, 100 Suns, was set in 1900s and about the Michelin family and the rubber plantations. I might even have the timing wrong. I can't remember, but it's like it brings you to another world. And then she has a new book coming out, A Woman of Intelligence, and I've already pre-ordered that book last year, With or Without You, which I loved, and I'm sure she's a full-time novelist, so I'm sure she has something wonderful coming out soon too. There's just so many great authors.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite U2 songs, With or Without You.
Yeah, and you know what's so funny? The acronym for that is WOWY, WOWY.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
With or Without You, the acronym is WOWY, because she would send me emails, and she would actually, so she and I had done some book tour events together, and she would actually use that acronym for her book, With or Without You, WOWY.
Brilliant. That's great. So that moves me on nicely to the next question, if that's okay. Thanks very much for all the recommends there. That's brilliant. So would you have a favorite artist or band, Carol, that you like? Would you have a favorite?
Oh, it's so hard to say favorite.
Yeah. What's your,
A lot of
sorry.
times what happens is I think we get nostalgic for those bands we listened to in our more formative years.
Yeah.
So, although I like a lot of music now, when I hear certain things like there's a band called Prodigy
I love them.
or
Yeah.
Meat Manifesto, like that kind of era
Mm.
takes me back to a time. And
Yeah.
there's nothing like that feeling of, kind of going back to your youth.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, pretty, because I'm a DJ myself, so I love playing that when I'm out in the club. So,
oh,
well,
okay.
obviously not now, but no, it's really good. Like,
Okay.
and all the '90s stuff really gets people on the floor,
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's what will get me on the floor.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, but yes, yeah, that's great. Thanks. And do you have a favorite movie? Do you have favorite movies? What would your all-out favorite movie be? No,
I
no
don't,
pressure. No
it's
pressure.
hard to say exactly, but I'm thinking of there's one that's really clever where Jake Gyllenhaal has to go back in time over and over to replay the same moment to try to save I think a woman or a city before a bomb explodes. I think it's called Inception, if
Oh
I'm
yeah.
remembering correctly. I just remember the cleverness with which it built, and you had one sense of reality. And that might be a bit of a theme, this idea of you think reality is one thing, but it's actually another. And it's that same kind of feeling you get with the rug pull of Matrix, or even like when I was talking about Una Out of Order, has that, like you think one thing's reality, but it's actually something else.
Mm.
I think those are really clever.
Yeah, that's Inception. It's a great film. I love that film. Yeah, it's really, really good. Leonardo DiCaprio is in it, I think, isn't he?
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of the wrong one then. I'm
Maybe I'm
thinking of a
wrong.
different one.
No, maybe.
No, I
Sorry.
think it's me that's wrong.
Yeah. No, I think no.
Yeah, I know
that's
the
where
Leonardo DiCaprio one.
Maybe I'm thinking it's when they go into different dreams. They go into different dreams.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, we got.
I love that one.
Yeah, it's really
Source Code is the Jake Gyllenhaal one. I
yeah,
think is called Source Code, but I love
source code.
Inception too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, I must check that one out. Thanks very much. Yeah, that's great. And so like if you could live anywhere else than where you live in like the States, would you have any other place you'd like to live for?
Well, my husband and I have traveled to some gorgeous places in the
Mm,
world,
brilliant.
and I actually do love Dublin. I brought my boys back there a few years after and they had a really good time there. But
Yeah.
my husband and I have really loved when we traveled to the south of France. These are very cliche.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
Provence,
I'd love to go.
um,
Yeah, I'd love to go there.
yeah, around, the south of Italy is beautiful.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
Bali is gorgeous. Because when we lived in China, we traveled around Asia a lot. And then I have a special place in my heart for Israel. It's a really
mm.
beautiful country and
Okay.
so unusual. And I think it has desert, but it also has sea, it has mountains. It's gorgeous. And the people are really lovely when I visited. I haven't been there a long time, but it felt like a very, of course, spiritual place.
Sounds very nice. Sounds very nice. I don't think I'll get the kids there, but only joking. That sounds lovely. That sounds really good. But like I've got a teenager and a 3-year-old and an 11-year-old, so they're like Disney World, or Salou or Malaga, But no, that's great. Yeah, Israel got like when hopefully like we can myself and my wife can travel there at some point. It sounds nice. Sounds lovely. Yeah, yeah. But listen, that's really good. Maybe just one final thing, if you don't mind, Carol. If you could say to anybody motivational, if you just say had a billboard and you could write out just something there for everybody to see, what would you write on it?
Yeah. The thing, and I speak at writers' conferences, and one thing that I share that authors tell me they find really helpful, perhaps what I would put on the billboard is find your inspiring purpose.
Very good.
And this is something I talk about with authors when I teach a class around author brand. What is author brand and why it matters? I ask them the question of why they do what they do beyond the obvious profit or functional purposes. And I
Mm,
asked myself this question too in my writing, because I have a full-time job and I have twins, and I volunteer on a board of directors. I'm trained as a climate reality leader. I have a lot of things going on in my life. So why write? And what am I trying to do? And what am I trying to do with all this, activity I have? And so for me, I articulated my inspiring purpose as by being my authentic self, I want to inspire hope and empathy for people and planet. And having that clarity of my personal why helps me, therefore, be able to choose what I do and what I don't do. What am I going to spend my time on? People, sometimes will offer me, they'll ask me to speak at this event, or they'll ask me if I'll coach them, or, a lot of opportunities come up.
mm.
And I need a way to be able to choose what do I spend my finite time on? What's important enough and what's aligned enough with what I think my personal mission is to spend my time on.
Yeah, that's really, really good. Thanks very much. That's an amazing answer. Very nice, very nice. Thank you. Because no, just looking at the name of the book and all that, I can kind of have movie in my mind. Like, would you, is that kind of a thing you'd like to happen with the book in the future?
Yeah, a lot of readers tell me when I'm at book clubs or I'm at book events, people tell me that Goodbye Orchid is quite cinematic. They can
Sounds.
picture the
Yeah.
scenes, it's really, they envision Phoenix and Orchid. It's set in Manhattan and it's set in New Jersey. She also goes to China on her business trip. There's a portion in different parts on the East Coast in the US, and people can really envision it, really envision the characters, and they feel like they could see it on the screen. And
Mm.
so I've had a lot of book clubs want to cast who are the characters going to be, and
Mm.
that they're, fingers crossed, hoping for a movie someday.
Yeah, the best luck with it, and the best luck with all your future endeavors, like your next book and all that. Because, like, one last thing, I think it's great when you're reading a book, your imagination is so good, like you're saying there, people can see it on the screen. Like, it's like anybody when reading a book, like you can visualize it because it's so strong, isn't it? Your mind is so strong. Yeah,
It's true. It's true.
yeah,
Thank you so much. And I wish you the best with your
yeah,
children's book too. You'll have to
yeah,
let me know how I can
yeah,
support your launch
yeah.
especially when things come out of lockdown.
Thanks very much, Carol, and all the best to you and your family.
You too, Mark. Anyone who's looking for me, please feel free to go to my website, carolvandenhende.com. It's spelled CarolVandenHende.com. Or maybe a very simple place to go is my link tree. So linktr.ee/CVDH. So if you just go to linktree/CVDH, that will actually bring you to a place that will give you links to Amazon, to Goodreads, to Twitter, to BookBub, to Instagram, to Facebook, to Pinterest, to YouTube, and all the places to Bookshop, all the places to buy Goodbye Orchid, and all the places to connect with me on social media. So that's one really great shortcut.
Yeah, that's really great, Carol. And make sure you send me on the links to your books as well and all your information. I'll put them in the show notes, okay?
Wonderful. So great speaking with you.
You too. Take care. Thank you. Good night.